Hi, hello, welcome to Fat Mascara. I'm Jen Sullivan.
Welcome, I'm Jess Matlin. Ooh, today is a goodie. It's a goodie. I've been waiting.
Okay, before we get into that, it is a podcast about beauty culture. You can leave us
They're here. They made it.
On Spotify. We love that. Just scroll down and tell us what you thought of the episode. You can go over to Apple Podcasts and review us. We really appreciate it.
Leave as many stars as you want. Say however you feel.
It's true. Like, it's
we
an
can
honest
take it.
Referendum. It is.
A referendum.
I don't know.
That's so
they're
serious.
not all 5 stars. It's fine. We have a good rating. We do. But I do like to read them on the air. So that's another reason to leave us a review or a comment. I have one. This was just from 3 days ago.
Okay.
This is from someone named
fresh.
Chelsea. Yes.
Current.
This person did give us 5 stars.
Oh, wait. Say their name again. Say it loud.
Chelsea.
Thank you, Chelsea.
The title of the review is Dating, Migraines, Etc., which gives me an idea of which episode they were listening to. But Chelsea says, "Thanks so much for the shout out to nurses. Much appreciated." Yes,
God's
Chelsea.
work. God's work.
You are, all like my best friends that aren't in media are nurses, without fail.
Nurses really are doing the Lord's work. And anytime,
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm sick or somebody else I know is in the hospital, it's like, can we allocate some of the wealth over there?
Yeah.
Topical. All right.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Douglas Wood, I don't want to speak for him, but I have a feeling he would be happy. He would be on board with an I Love Nurses candle or sticker or campaign or something. Douglas Little. So who is Douglas Little? Well, he's a man of many talents. He does a lot of different things, but you may know him because of his first line DL & Co., but his other line is Heretic, which is, it just has such an offbeat, dark kind of, brings kind of the how do I say this? The kind of like darker side of the fragrance world, but mashes it with beauty. And that is why people like Gwyneth Paltrow tap him on the shoulder when they want to create a fragrance that's going to feel luxury, feel beautiful, but cut through the noise. But Douglas is really somebody who's so true to his aesthetic and to his singular vision, which is really like a refined, elegant, goth sensibility that I feel has been so ahead of his time. He's been doing this since 2003. He's also got a little bit of a rock and roll vibe. And he's so true to himself, and that's why people come to him not only for product development, but also even for something we didn't talk about. But please look into it. Look into this window design and beautiful displays. He's like a true artist, and I was just totally taken by this conversation.
Yeah, he's great. And so in addition to Heretic Parfums, which he is the perfumer and fragrance creator behind, he's a creative director and has his own site, douglaslittle.com, where he does the goop stuff Jess talked about, works with Dita von Teese, Jim Thompson, Big Sexy Hair, and others. So yeah, it's a whirlwind interview. We talk about a lot. Actually, he's a great storyteller. Should we just get into it?
Yeah, let's do it, Jen. So, Douglas, I struggled with really how to introduce you because you do so much. You are what they call a multi-hyphenate. I don't know if you would describe yourself that way, but I do. But when you went into the beauty industry, how did you describe yourself?
First of all, I've been called a lot of things, but multi-hyphenate is new, so I'm into this.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like it.
I think I heard that word once in like an Entertainment Weekly intro about like a model, actress, songwriter or something, and I liked it.
I like it too.
So,
it's
yeah.
nice. I will tell you that actually it's been my biggest Achilles heel in my career. Because when I had my start in the beauty industry, I started off out of art center, going into art direction, and then landed myself doing product development in hair care. And so the first thing I realized, I was like, okay, I need to know what I'm talking about. So I put myself through Vidal Sassoon and I was like, okay, well, maybe I should be doing session work on the side. And so I'd go out and I'd meet with agents and they were like, well, what do you do? And I would try to explain to them. I was like, well, I'm a product designer. And then I also do session work. And they were like, you need to pick a lane. This has been my problem my whole life. It's really, I think, and speaking to other creatives, this is a common problem for a lot of creatives, is that we all really enjoy being able to kind of sink our teeth into these things that we love and enjoy. And then the problem with it is, okay, so what do you do? And it's very difficult to say to someone, well, I'm a creative director, which just sounds like a crock of shit. Do you know what I mean? It sounds like you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, it's challenging. But I mean, the way that I describe myself now is I describe myself as a creative director, a CEO, and a perfumer. So to kind of get to the point of it is I run a fragrance company, and my role in that company is CEO, but I'm also the perfumer for the brand, and I'm also doing all of the creative development. So it's a really loaded question.
I'm sure people are nodding along and listening, people who do. And if you're a creative person, there's probably a reason why you are a multi-hyphenate, even if that is something that many people might not feel comfortable describing themselves as Jen is a producer. Jen also does speeches. Jen also writes. I'm a merchant. I'm a journalist. I'm this, I'm that. But you don't come to the table and you say, oh, well, I do all these things. Like it's not comfortable to say you're all singing, all dancing, because a lot of people, they want to put you in a box, especially if you're going for a job. How do you recommend other people when you're marketing yourself? How do you recommend other creatives grapple with that? Because that is a thing. People don't want to hear the 75-line resume. They don't want to hear your life story. How do you recommend creatives reconcile that?
This is such a powerful conversation, and it's one that I think really resonates with the creative industry and the creative community on such a big level. And I think that the quick
we will
answer,
talk about your perfume. Don't worry.
No, it's all good. I mean, this is really.
No, I didn't think we were going to talk about this right away, but it was something that you said just really resonated with me, because I feel like everyone in our industry, at least, we used to do kind of one thing, even though we really didn't. But now it's like it's exploded, and now we either by force or because we want to, we do so much,
Yeah, I think that the answer to this question is like any good business person, which a lot of creatives struggle with the left and the right brain conversation. But I think if you are able to sustain yourself doing what you love or doing your creative, is that the most important thing is know your audience. And so if you know your audience, then you know what to go into and you know what to tell them. So, just recently I went in to go have a conversation with a client who wants me to develop a custom fragrance for them. I didn't talk about my creative direction skills. I talked about these are the fragrances that have been nominated for Fifis. This is what I've done. I developed X, Y, and Z. And so I'm happy to give you the laundry list of my resume, but it's really about what are you going after? And I think what do you want to present at that time to them that's going to help sell that through to the person about what you do and why they should hire you. And so I think most creatives, really do that. But I would be incredibly remiss as a creative to say that I don't have this massive love of doing visual installation and doing immersive event design. And I've been hired to do so many different things. I mean, just recently I was hired to work on a bunch of food things. So it's like we are all multidisciplinary creatives. Do you know what I mean? And I think that now, especially in this, when our world has been so shaped with technology, and it's about how do you take and how do you apply your creativity, how do you apply your passion to these different formats? And we have all become producers, creators, content creators, marketers. Like we no longer can have the luxury of saying like, all I do is I do this one thing. I wish that I could do that, It's we really have to like wear all the hats. And the question is just like, how do you accessorize those hats, I guess is the question.
That was $1 million advice. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of our audience has come to listen to you talk about your work in fragrance, because we are primarily a beauty podcast. So your first line is, at least the first line that I know, was the DL & Co line. That was, I remember it coming out like the early 2000s, and it was I had this spider web candle, then there was an apple candle. It was awesome. It was really one of the first lines that I remember. Jen is nodding her head.
I had a skull candle.
Oh.
It was really cool. It really felt, it's even now if it came out today, like very singular in its vision. It was like elevated goth. It was something that I think now that if it came out today, I feel like the reception would be even more tremendous. Tell us about that line. Where did the inspiration come from?
First of all, I want to say how much this like really fills my heart because it was, I don't know how to describe it. When I launched DL & Co., I launched it in 2003, and I launched it out of what I really felt that there was a hole in the industry and the hole in the fragrance world, especially within American luxury. I really didn't see there being a brand that was doing anything like this. And so I really wanted to create something that would fill a void. And also to really speak to who I am as a creative, which is I have this very dark romantic side to me. And I wanted to really bring that out and bring that out to other people that have this dark romance about them.
Mm-hmm.
And the launch of it and the kind of concept around it was everything that I do is very psychologically based. So my cocktail conversation around the line was I'm creating this brand, DL & Co., which is about dangerous beauty and about the most of us that sometimes, most of us, I mean, for me personally, let me speak in a personal capacity, first person. For me, the most beautiful things have often been the most dangerous. And that really has spoken to me in my relationships and things that I've been attracted to. I've always had this very intense love for all things that go bump in the night and for things that I think that for most people, I think that they find frightening. And for me as a child, I can remember rooting for the villains. I can remember like really having this love of things that scared a lot of people. And for me, it felt very familiar and it felt like home in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
so I've really spent my life exploring the unexplored and really wanting to kind of tell those stories. And fragrance for me, whether it's home fragrance or personal fragrance, body fragrance, whatever, fragrance for me is the most powerful vehicle for storytelling. And I think that it is still so untapped, even though we have these juggernaut brands like Byredo and Le Labo, and we've got these niche, gorgeous fragrance companies that have been doing these really interesting things with fragrance. There's still so much more to tell. And now I think, especially with the world exploding the way that it has, and people having these diverse interests and now having like all these micro influencers to kind of even further their interests, there's even more opportunity to kind of really tell these stories.
So what happened to the line? Can I ask? Like, I feel like there are a lot of people who are like, oh, remember that line? What happened to it? Where'd it go?
Yeah, it's the classic. And it's again kind of goes back to the beginning of this. It's like this story of what is the recommendation that you would give to another creative. And this is like a story that it's very painful for me to tell. However, I very much believe that creativity is this gift that we've all been given by some kind of higher power, whatever you believe in. And it is our purpose to step into that and to keep doing that. Like, I would never stop doing what I'm doing. Even if I didn't have the means to do it, I would still find a way to do it because it's how I'm programmed. And DL & Co. for me became very successful. I had no idea what I was doing. I literally was coming out of the beauty industry. I was like, I have this idea. I want to give birth to it. I cashed in my 401k and slid it all across the table onto this idea. And then it took off. And like all creatives, do you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, this is working. This is so exciting. And so I was like, on to the next collection. And then all of a sudden, I ran out of money. And I was like, okay, so now what? And then I started scrambling and I was going to banks. They were like, okay, yeah, we can give you a loan for $20,000. I'm like, it's not going to make it. And so then I was like, do I take a second on my house? What do I do? And then a friend of mine was like, oh, you should meet with my friend. He invests in brands. And so I met with this person who was involved in the garment industry. They were like, hey, I mean, I was 30 when this happened. You know what I mean? I had no idea, no business background. And so I sat down and I was like, if I don't get money to be able to buy into this next collection, I'm going to be off shelf. And at that time, like Neiman's had picked me up, Saks had picked me up. Like all of a sudden the brand was like really popping. And so it felt like, hindsight being 2020, I should have just slowed my roll, but I didn't want to let it simmer down. So I was like, let's do this. And it was a handshake deal. And they were like, great, let's do this. And then we were off and running. And 6 months later, then the paperwork came across my desk about what was going to be the agreement. And the agreement was, insane. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to sign this. And they said, pay me back. You have a week, pay me back, or I'm going to take your company. And so I was like, oh, okay, so here we are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in bed with this and I've got to make this work. And so I did. And I bumped along with it. And it's funny, my voice is even cracking talking about this because it's like, it was such a detrimental thing. And it was so intense. And it was like, all I can say is for any creative that's out there that's looking to have an investor, you just need to know that whatever you're doing, you are getting in bed with someone. You are in a marriage. Like, it is a marriage, and it is a legal binding marriage when you sign that agreement. And I did. And so I had to roll along with it until I couldn't. And then that's exactly what happened, is it just got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore.
Does it exist anymore in some shape or form?
No, the way I went to my lawyer and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just want them to buy me out. And they said, okay, go and present that. And so I went and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Let's just find a way to amicably walk away from each other. And this is how much I think I should get from the company. And they said to me, you're in breach of your agreement and I will sue you. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. So my lawyer said, the best thing for you to do is just to walk away from the company. And so that's what I did. I just walked away from the company. And the only thing I was able to walk away with was my name. And, basically some IP that I had developed. But this story is a story that is very normal and very common, I should say, in the world of creative. Is where people got a passionate creative, they get very excited, they don't, really, like, I didn't have legal advisor when I signed the contract. So it was like, I really didn't understand what I was getting myself into, which is my own fault. I take full responsibility for it. But it was a painful lesson, and the company went on without me for a couple years, and it rattled on. And then they started basically producing my concepts, but making them
not the way you would.
No, it was much less
I think
expensive.
I remember this, yeah.
And all of a sudden the brand just kind of fell apart. And they've since sold the brand to someone else, and they've kind of taken a piece of that company and have kept it going underneath a subsidiary. But what was known as DL & Co. no longer exists, which is thrilling for me, because now I'm able to kind of... Heretic is what I always wanted DL & Co. to be. And it's being done in a way that is so much more powerful, and it has such a better, it just feels much more authentic.
I hope you're able to see that maybe that had to happen, right? Because you walked away with your brain and all these learnings.
100%. It was the
Heretic
best,
can do it the right way.
It was the best lesson ever. And there's so many metaphorical, metaphysical, weird moments that I could talk about with it, where it's like, when I did DL & Co., I was building DL & Co. on this idea of this kind of myself as this Victorian dandy living in this modern world. And I was really leaning into the artifice of it. And what's funny about that is that, I don't know, whatever, it just sounds so woo-woo when I say this, but it was like, if you present yourself as something other than you are, it only works for so long. And
were you not the dandy, the Victorian dandy?
I was buying into it. But, the fact is that I think that there was a reality that was missing from the equation. And it started to disintegrate. And when it all fell apart, it was a very interesting lesson for me. And when I started when I started Heretic, I never wanted to present something other than who I am. And I wanted to develop concepts that were honoring what I love, but was about authenticity. And that was really about unpacking these fragrance formulas, radical transparency with what I was making
more
the fragrances
multifaceted.
from. Very multifaceted.
Yeah.
And so that's why when, it's funny, when I go and I meet with venture capital people and whatnot, and they're talking about, they asked me to present the concept for Heretic. They're like, oh, wow, this is a real passion project for you. And I was like, this is who I am. It's like, if you cut me open, this is literally who I am. It's not that I've developed out this brand idea and I'm like, oh, I want to make clean perfume and I'm going to market to this demographic. No, that's not me. It's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's a very different world. And I think that that's why Heretic is this odd anomaly, because it is art driven, it's passion driven, it's coming from a place of true authenticity.
Okay, but so this is you. This is like genuine Douglas. Let's say there's like a social media manager who's like, we're doing this random little video, and it's just like does not align with your heart and soul, which is so much what this company is. Are you able to separate yourself and let go of those little things? Or do you find yourself like, because you're so the brand, that not micromanagement, you know what I mean? Like you want to get into the details a lot. Like how do you manage when you are the brand?
What's been interesting is that this company has attracted others. And so my group, like I really and truly have this amazing group of people that we're all coming from the same place. And so I would never.
You wouldn't be working here if you didn't get it.
No.
Okay. But tell me this. You play with the dark side of nature. You seem like a very optimistic and loving and spiritual person, but yet like you're attracted to this dark glamour. You mentioned the dandy and the Victorian. Like, why do you think that is? What is it about the bump in the night stuff that you're so drawn to?
I think that because within all of us that we all have a shadow side, and our shadow side is what fuels the light side of us. And it is a constant yin and yang. And if you ignore the shadow aspect of yourself, you're really not complete. And it takes both the dark and the light to make any situation. Even if we bring this back to fragrance, if you were to create a fragrance and it was just purely made out of only florals,
good analogy.
It is very sickening. And it may appeal to someone, but it's going to be very short-lived. It's fragrances that toy with things that are considered dark, or you have this kind of like mysterious element, or these kind of elements, like let's pick an ingredient like patchouli, polarizing. But the tiniest amount of patchouli up against a jasmine or a tuberose makes that beautiful white floral so much more impactful. And so it is that dark and light that really make up who I am as a creative. And also, again, I say this stuff and I hear myself saying it. I'm like, wow, I just sound like a crazy Californian.
No.
But I'm also a Scorpio, and I'm so deeply in my Scorpio nature is to unpack the shadow. And that's where I'm the most comfortable, is in things that are unusual, things that are uncommon, things that scare a lot of people. This is where I'm the most comfortable.
So if anyone is listening and they're like, well, I don't, we name check some of the fragrances at the top, but like, okay, Voodoo Lily, Poltergeist, Dirty Vanilla. We're going to talk about the Nosferatu. What are some other ones? The Blood Box, the Gothic Antiquarian. What's going on there?
Well, first of all, your tone I don't like, because I feel
I'm into it. Douglas.
She saw that's Jess knowing she's vibing with someone like-minded, to like-minded.
I'm hook, line, and sinker. Are you kidding? I would have bought all of this stuff if I wasn't in the industry. I'd be number one loyalty program. Okay, you guys have a loyalty program.
I'm just kidding you. We do.
Okay, listeners, but I need to know what references, like what's on the mood board. Where are you in your mind space? Like, let's get specific.
Well, first and foremost, what I've been wanting to do with Heretic is really create fragrances that are left of center. So I really don't want to give our customers another vanilla. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really am looking to curate a customer who is looking to smell different. And so I want Heretic to be a touch point for when you're looking for a fragrance that's not going to make you smell like everyone else, come to us. And that is what the world that I want to create. So I'm not going to go and create a rose fragrance. Do you know what I mean? If we're going to do rose, it's going to be called Dirty Rose. If I'm going to do a vanilla, it's going to be called Dirty Vanilla. I know that there's a lot of people out there that this is not for, but that's fine. There's so many other things that are for that person.
And tell us about the kind of clients that you get.
So our clients, we have a really wonderful cross-section of clients that's fascinating. We do have a really gorgeous goth girly who I'm continually in love with. And I love these people. I love these girls. I love these boys, because these people...
Is she Dita?
Some of them are Dita, but there's like all these like new cross sections of this world, this like cottage core, you've got all these kind of new ideas of granny core, like people that are really interested in this kind of European folktale, this kind of a life that is a bit more romantic. I would say, and also exciting news, we're launching with anthropology next year. So I think that there's an anthropology girl who's like has this kind of interest in, she can slide into something that's a little spooky. And
But that's what's so interesting. It's like, I think, and this is what I was like thinking at the beginning. It's like, I feel like the DL and Co was like so kind of like Barney's niche. It was like this, the world, there were like 5 people who were ready for like luxury goth. And
yeah,
now like the world is like everyone has a little bit of the darkness. Everyone is like, they're ready for darkness.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
been embraced in a much bigger capacity. And I think people are much more comfortable in kind of coming out of the broom closet with their like their gothiness and saying that they enjoy a spooky story. Or, I mean, if you just look at the past 5 years and you look at what's happened around spooky season, it is now a major marketing campaign for people to really develop product that's specifically geared towards people that enjoy September, October, Halloween activities.
I'm thinking not just the spooky season stuff, but just like, even I think about the people who are very big in pop culture. I think about how dark like Billie Eilish can get
Oh yeah.
sometimes, or like the women who are very big, like in like a, like I think of it just how young people, when I was younger, I felt like, oh, if you're into dark stuff, like you're dark, you're goth, lock you away in Hot Topic and throw away the key. And now here, I feel like dark beauty.
Topic.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I feel like it's a little bit more mainstream to play with a dragon's blood or to wear stickers on your face, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think that this idea within the United States, the idea of longing, the idea of lost love, the idea of pining, these kind of European ideas that are very prevalent in European culture and European literature
Yeah.
are fairly
Russian
uncommon.
literature.
And
It's very Irish too.
It's
Yeah.
very Irish, it's very Scottish. This world is not a world that the United States is very familiar with and doesn't really celebrate it in a way. And I think that what's happened is you have this younger culture that's really started to look at the idea of the romance and the beauty that is often associated with, things that are dark. And there is a beauty to it. And that's always been what I've wanted to do with my company, is to really show the beauty that is in the darkness. And for some people, I don't believe that I've ever done anything that you couldn't look at and be like, okay, yeah, it's dark, but it is beautiful. And I mean, this dark beauty for me has been a constant source of inspiration. And it's why I ended up becoming, like, Dita is one of my very best friends. Do you know what I mean? And Dita is that dark beauty. You know what I mean? She is truly the epitome of that.
So yeah, tell us about these celebrity collaborations. You've had a couple.
Your muses.
Couple, yeah,
My
a couple.
muses,
You've had
yeah.
some biggies.
Yes, we've had some really good ones. I mean, even in my personal life, my fiance is Jodie Lynn O'Keefe, and we're getting married next year. And Jodie she is another extraordinary dark beauty. So yeah, for me, I've always had this like real affinity for them. And as far as my celebrity collaborations, there's been some that have been a big surprise and some that I really was hoping for. Dita was one that I knew who she was for a long time. When I took on this business partner, I moved my offices down to the California Mart of downtown Los Angeles. And so I happened to be going into the office one day. It was like 2005. And I get into the elevator. I literally had come from the gym and was stepping into the elevator. I was going to do some paperwork. And who walks into the flippin' elevator but Dita? And she's all in Dita gear. And she steps in. And my best thinking was just to turn around and face the back of the elevator, because I was like, oh my God, it's her. And I literally just turned around like a crazy person and faced the back of the elevator the entire ride. And then she got off on the same floor and I ran the other way. And I ran into my office. I told my assistant, I was like, you need to put a package together right now. Dita is down the hallway. She's at Swarovski. And so my assistant at the time, you guys will love this. She also had a real affinity for all things dark and glamorous. And she came to work every day as a version of Tippi Hedren. I shit you not.
What?
And there was always a iteration of Tippi Hedren from The Birds.
This is like a reality show. Yeah.
And believe me, it really was. I think about it now, and it was incredible. She was always in a pencil skirt, heels, backseam stockings that were tattooed on her.
Oh my God.
And this like chignon of white hair. And so she runs down the hallway and she drops off this package to her. And 3 days later, I got this handwritten note from Dita, and we started our friendship, and we became fast friends ever since.
Also, you had that assistant to present it. She probably
I
just
know,
like looked the part.
She always, she was incredible. I take
She's
my
like,
hat
this
off
guy
to
gets
her.
it.
No, she was amazing. But yeah, other collaborations that we've done was obviously the most infamous one was with Gwyneth Paltrow. And Gwyneth is definitely not a dark beauty, quite the opposite.
Yeah, what's going on?
You know, I'll tell you, when that whole thing came up, I was so shocked by it because it came out of left field. And it really was Jean Godfrey June who made it all happen. And she knew me from my days with DL & Co. And she was obviously the editor-in-chief of Lucky. And we had a great relationship, and she wrote about my stuff all the time. But when she went on to work with Goop, she wrote to me and she was like, you know, I really think that Gwyneth would be interested in this. And I said to her, I was like, oh, okay. And so that's kind of where it ended. And then the next thing I know, I got an email from Gwyneth's assistant, and he said, Gwyneth's going to be in New York and she'd like to meet with you. And I literally was shaking at my laptop, like, oh my God, now what? And I'm thinking, like, do I need to rent an office? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I thought, nope. You're in your authenticity. Like, you just have to embrace this and let it happen. And so 2 weeks later comes a knock at my apartment in New York, and in comes Gwyneth Paltrow, and dead of summer. And I almost couldn't talk because I was so nervous. And then once I settled down and started talking about fragrance, which is where I'm the most comfortable, and first of all, when I meet with a client, I always predetermine fragrances based on who I think they are. So, and 9 times out of 10, I'm right. So I had put out a deck of fragrances for her, and I was like, okay, we're going to be talking about California fragrances. So it's going to be jasmine and rose and magnolia, and we're going to do all these citruses, and we're going to work with these ambretalides. It's going to be this soft, sunny bunny California fragrance. First thing out of her mouth is she was like, so I really want to do a fragrance. I love what you're doing. And what I've been wanting to create is 3 or 4 different moods. And she was like, I really want to capture these moments that have been really impactful in my life. She was like, there's this one moment when I was in Switzerland and I was having this insane sex with a friend. And we were on the floor, and there was the smell of the sex, there was the smell of the floor, and it was winter. And there was this roaring fire. And I just remember that moment, and I was like, oh, I love this bitch. Like, she is unbelievable. She is incredible. And then the more we talked, she just was dismantling everything that I thought about. She was like, I do not want a citrus fragrance. I don't want something that's going to appeal to a broad audience. I want to do these really cool fragrances that are going to be polarizing. And I was like, oh my God, she is so rad. Like, she was so incredible. And the more that we got to know each other and the more that I felt more comfortable with her, she is so not what people think. You know, she really and truly is so insanely creative. And she's coming at it from such an interesting place. And yeah, there's all of the other things that are involved with Gwyneth, but she's very legit. She's a very legit creative. And she's got incredible taste, obviously, but she's not afraid to go against the grain. And I think that as someone in her place, I think a lot of celebrities would just go for least path of resistance. And she is very much like, no, this is what I want to do, and this is what we're going to do.
So is the Switzerland candle, this candle smells like my vagina?
No, the vagina came later, and I'm happy to unpack that if you'd like. But this particular fragrance was part of the fragrances I did for Goop, which was the 4 EDPs. So it was edition 1, 2, 3, and 4. And edition 1 was like a winter fragrance.
Okay. And that's the one that comes from the crazy sex one.
That was Sexy Time in Switzerland, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that vivid anecdote.
Sorry, then I got to unpack this candle smells like my vagina. Who named that? Did you? Did she?
So it was, again, people probably won't believe this, but I swear to God, it's the truth. It was a full-blown accident. So while I was working on these fragrances, these additions, we were getting to the point where we were talking about summer because we were looking at, okay, there's winter, spring, summer, fall. So we got to summer and Gwyneth said to me, what are you thinking that we should do for summer? And I said, well, I mean, if you want to sell a bunch of fragrance, we should do this classic summer orchard type of a world. But I said, me personally, as an artist and perfumer, the thing that turns me the most on about summer is going to Big Sur. So it's where I spend most of my summer, if I can. I love it there. It's incredible. Big Sur, for anyone that's been there, has a very specific fragrance, no matter what time of year you're there. But it is this interesting cross-section of where you have these evergreens. So you've got all these pines and cypresses and cedars, but you also have the brininess from the sea. And then you also, no matter what time of year, you can always smell smoke. There's always the smell of like a campfire or like a burning smoke. Burning smoke. So I said, why don't we do a fragrance that is really driven by this idea of Big Sur in the summer and something that's less expected, and we can really work into this kind of world of salt and brine and seaweed and sage and smoke. And she was like, yeah, this sounds amazing. So off I go and I'm tinkering. And the way that we would work is I would develop fragrances, very much like the chaos that you see behind me. And then I would come to her with all these fragrances and I would bring the individual notes as well as the final formula. So I brought the individual notes and I said, yeah, I found this incredible seaweed absolute. It comes from France. It's from this little distillery. And I was like, it's really intense. And there was like 3 people in the meeting. And I said, so just so you're aware, when you smell it, it's going to be intense. So keep it away from your nose because it's going to be too powerful. And she grabs a bottle and she picks it up and she smells it. And she stops and pulls back. And she goes, oh my God, this smells like a vagina. And I said, okay, first of all, if your vagina smells like this, you need to see someone because that's a problem. And so it of course, was a great icebreaker in this meeting. And we all were roaring, laughing, and talking about it. And it kind of ended there. But then for whatever reason, because of who I am and because I'm an asshole, I would not let it go. And so every time I would see her, I would have I got a bunch of pencils made that says this smells like my vagina. And so I would go into her office and I would just put them in her pencil cup. And then we would have a meeting. And then later I would get a funny text message. And one Christmas, I made these fragrance flasks. And for Christmas, I sent her one and I had it engraved and it said, this smells like my vagina. And she, on Christmas Day, sent me a text message with her. And she was like, this is hands down the best Christmas gift anyone's ever given me. And it kind of died there. And then she was doing one of her Goop summits in San Francisco. And she asked me, do you want to come and exhibit Heretic there? And I said, yes, of course. So I went up and I showed up and I made 50 candles that said, this smells like my vagina. And she walked up to the booth and I said, I've got a surprise for you. And I showed her the candle and she was like, are you kidding me right now? And I said, no, surprise. And she was like, oh my God, this is so funny. She was like, well, let's see what happens. And so that day, someone from Teese magazine was at the Goop Summit. And by the way, those candles sold out in like 2.2 seconds. Like they were gone so fast. And I was like, oh, okay, this works. And the buyer came up to me at Goop and they were like, okay, we probably should buy these and do these. And I was like, okay, great. And so that's kind of where it went. But from that, this person from Teese magazine bought one. And then within like 3 days, it was in Teese magazine. And no one knew about it. We hadn't even put it up on the Goop website yet. And all of a sudden it hit. And it happened so fast that the Goop executives were sending me emails that were like, did you have the approval to do this? And I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, like I made a huge mistake. I've completely, I ruined everything. And I was like, well, this is like scary. An inside joke that Gwyneth and I had. And, I thought it would be fun. And,
copying Gwyneth.
Blah,
she
blah, blah.
said she laughed.
I was. Exactly.
I swore she laughed. She liked it.
and actually, she was CC'd on all this stuff. And she,
sure.
in a CC, she wrote back and she was like, everyone needs to cool it. This is fine. Let's just do this. Let's see what happens.
That's really funny.
And so, and then bang, you know, I mean, it became this like viral thing. And the next thing I know, it's on Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm like, how did this happen?
So your little inside joke became like a major revenue driver at Coop.
It was insane. I mean, it was just crazy how fast and how furious it all went. And of course, people are always asking, like, did it smell like the seaweed? No. With this candle, I wanted to make something that was really beautiful. So I did this very soft rose, this kind of soft incensey rose fragrance. And the like content that came out of that candle was so wild. I mean, at one point, I forgot who did it, but someone did a blind vagina scent experience where they had a panel and they just had people smelling a bunch of random candles and the vagina candle was in them. And they had to vote which one was the vagina. And I died watching this. Like, I died watching it because, of course, the commentary is so funny about all of it, but they all picked the right one. They all were like, oh, this one is sexy smelling. I bet this is the vagina. And so it was one of those moments that, yes, this did work, you know, and I think it did convey what we were hoping to convey. But more importantly, while it was a joke and it was an inside thing that happened between Gwyneth and I, there was a bigger topic in this, which was this like dismantling of the taboo around body odors. And specifically, I think a lot of women have, there is some shame that is wrapped around it. And I really believe that it opened up this idea of talking about it. And I think more importantly, this idea of really dismantling shame around sexuality is so powerful. And I think that the candle, while it was very tongue-in-cheek, obviously, I think it did really open up conversation. And even in that thing when they did the blind smelling, I loved hearing, you know, they had a gay guy on it, they had a couple lesbians, they had a wonderful trans person that was talking about it, and they had a straight dude. And it was just so interesting to hear the conversation that it opened up. And it kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation, which is how fragrance can open up dialogue. And that is the most important thing, is just to get people talking.
You kind of have people talking again now with Nosferatu, no?
Yeah.
In our world, at least.
I could not be happier. Yeah, it's really been wonderful.
Got a lot of buzz. And how did that come about? I mean, the movie's not out yet. It's coming out in 2 weeks from when we air this.
Yeah.
What's a vampire smell like?
Great question. The way that it came about was, it made me so happy because I got a email from our PR company and she said, there's someone that wants to talk to you about a potential movie thing, like doing a fragrance for a movie. And I was like, okay, I'm interested. So we got on this call and they were being very clandestine about like, oh, you know, we've got this project. We wanted to see if you'd be interested. And I was like, okay, what is the project? And they were like, so Robert Eggers, and I was like, stop there, because whatever it is that he's doing, I'm in. And then they were like, he's doing Nosferatu. And you could have picked me up with a shovel. I liquefied.
This
on
is
the
why
floor.
you take every meeting, people.
Yes.
You didn't know.
No.
You didn't know.
clue.
It's like so you.
That's so
Do you
cool.
understand? The goth teenager in me exploded. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. My
so cool.
lunchbox carrying 14-year-old goth kid exploded. And I was like,
great.
yes, I want to do this. And I immediately was like, okay, this is going to be this like crazy licensing deal.
How did you act like during the meeting? Were you like,
I was trying to be very cool. I really was.
Were you though?
I held it together until the end. And then at the end of the meeting, I lost my shit. Like, I was really trying so hard to be like, okay.
Did you call Dita? Like, when did you call Dita?
I texted her while the meeting was happening.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way.
Knew it.
Yeah.
Like skull, emoji, heart, skull.
No. It was heart, bat, heart.
Coffin.
Coffin. Yes, exactly. Creepy that you saw my text message, but okay.
I just once you said lunchbox, I was like, oh, I know this guy. I know this guy.
Yeah,
We would have been buddies.
100%. So after I got over the shock of it, and at the end of the call, by the way, like this is how I couldn't hold it together because I was like, okay, business. It's all business. Like, let's talk about return on investment. Let's talk about EBITDA. Let's get into that. And then at the end, I was like, I'm freaking out. And I was like, I literally don't know what to do with myself. And she was like, well, we're just so excited that you're interested in this project because we did so much research on perfume brands. And she was like, and we just really feel like Heretic is the right fit. And that was the moment where, let me explain to you, ladies, I was like, if I die right now, I'm good. Like the fact that they came to us and they were like, this is the brand that we want to work with. And, she was like, we really think that your customer is the right customer. They're going to get it. You're the right brand to talk about this. And I was like, it's so gratifying as a creative to know that the breadcrumbs that you've been putting out led Nosferatu to me. It led the vampire. So yeah. And then again, doing this fragrance, I sat down and started ideating on the fragrance, and I created my magnum opus of a fragrance. And I was like, it had like 62 ingredients in it. And I was putting it on everyone at the office, and people would be like, that's great. That's wonderful. And I was like, oh, this is a terrible fragrance. And they said, we want you to go see the movie. And I had gone into this with like, okay, I know I want to really unpack what does a vampire smell like and really try to get into that idea. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I was going in this. And I was looking at all of the history of vampires and like all my favorite vampires and using that as inspiration for what it would smell like. And I just kept going back to like these very particular tropes, which was like, obviously the smell of blood. So like really working with this metallic note. And then I was like, okay, well, we're going to have to do something that's churchy. So, I was getting into that burnt frankincense, myrrh world. And I was like, and then there probably should be like a candle wax, like that smell of candle wax that's involved with this. And that's really what I built. And I was like, okay, this is a cool fragrance. It's got this like cool edge. It kind of, I'm not going to lie, it smelled a little bit like a fancy occult shop. And I was like, like you've gone into the psychic guy and you've got some like fancy incense. And I was like, yeah, this is a cool fragrance. But then when I saw the movie and I was like, oh, shit, this fragrance doesn't work. The movie, I mean, it's Robert Eggers and he's a genius. The lighting, the cinematography, the costumes, the color palette for the film is so highly redacted. Wait, the costumes are not redacted. The costumes are very maximal. It's Victorian Gothic. But the color palette is so dialed in this film. It's so controlled. And the way that the lighting is done is it's so controlled. And Robert Eggers is famous for that. Like The Lighthouse is such a great example of that, mm-hmm. of these like the blacks are black. They're so crunchy and black. And the whites are so white. And the grays are that you've got like these 3 tones of grays that he does. And this film is like this weird violet, gray, blue color palette. And then there's these like flashes of amber that come in, and it's done in this very specific way. And it's so haunting and it's so Gothic, and it's just wonderful.
So you had to rework it. You had to rework your fragrance.
Oh, no, I burned it to the ground. I literally was like,
and you started again.
I have to start over. And so I went back and reapproached the fragrance from really the feeling that came out of the film. And Robert Eggers, he drops you into this world that is this Gothic romance that's happening between this vampire who's obsessed with this young girl. And it's very creepy. It's very creepy. And you're in this world of Count Orlok, which his castle is so spooky and atmospheric. And, it's in the Carpathian Mountains, and there's all this bramble and moss and wet dripping walls. And, it's a very, very atmospheric. And then his crypt is so incredible. And so those takeaways, I was like, okay, so I need to be really working, and it's raining a lot in the film. And so I was like, I think that there's a petrichor note that I can't ignore in this fragrance. And then once I was like, okay, petrichor is where I'm going to go, there was other elements that are lilacs play a big portion in this movie. And so I was like, okay, so lilacs are going to obviously be my heart chord. I'm going to use petrichor as my top note. And then the base note, which again, kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation of fragrance, base notes in fragrance are also, they're very much akin to the world of the shadow aspect of your personality. And so I used the base note to represent Count Orlok and developed the base of the fragrance around the kind of shadowy aspects of his obsession and built it out of a vegan ambergris, which ambergris is, for those of you that don't know, ambergris is a bile that comes from whales. And I couldn't use the real thing because we don't work with any animal ingredients. So I worked with this beautiful vegan replica of ambergris. And it is musky and briny and mysterious. And so the top chords represent Ellen Hutter, who is the young lady who the vampire is obsessed with. And then the base chord is represented by Count Orlok.
I like that palette better than the waxy cult shop anyway.
Yeah, very cool.
It's
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it feels like the perfect project for you. And
it really was.
As you said, really validating that it feels like every step of your career is like eye to eye, you're chosen for this project because somebody understands you and somebody who you respect.
And isn't that all of our goal in life, is just to we all just want to be seen. You know what I mean? And it's those moments when it happens that you really feel like, okay, what I'm putting out into the world is working, and it makes you feel like your efforts are worth it.
So we do this Fat Mascara 5, and special for you, a couple of these questions. So it's usually our speed round. But the first one we wanted to know, who's your favorite villain?
My favorite villain would probably be... Oh man, this is really tough.
You can. How about you could do a few favorite villains? I feel like we should let him have a few.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we could do animated and non-animated.
Oh,
animated.
Wow. Okay.
I want to know yours now, Jess.
Like Disney, and then real emotion.
Whatever. Maybe he wasn't even going to go there. What were you going to say?
I like this, though. I like this a lot. So as far as movie characters go, I would probably...
Political? I don't know.
Oh. We could be here for a long time.
I don't even think it was our favorite. Just kidding. Please don't at me. I don't know.
If I was to pick movie villains, I'm going to pick two. I would pick David, played by Fassbender in Prometheus and in the Alien series.
Okay.
My second would be American Psycho.
Ooh, Patrick Bateman.
Yes, exactly. And then as far as animated characters, I probably would pick Witch Hazel from Bugs Bunny.
Oh, wow. Niche.
Yeah.
Niche villain. I don't even remember Witch Hazel.
Yeah, Witch Hazel. Yeah, she was a good one.
I know my post-episode Google. Thank you. That'll entertain me for a good hour.
Was Bugs Bunny, was Hanna-Barbera?
Hanna-Barbera. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right? Okay.
Next, favorite horror movie.
Oh, favorite horror movie. That's, again, a real tough one because I've got many. But I would say that my top would be Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, okay.
I like that it's not gory and it's just more
No, I'm not a huge fan of gore. I really am not.
Me neither.
Regular life has so much horror anyway.
I know,
right?
Yes,
I know.
Yeah. My trilogy is Rosemary's Baby, The Shining, and Poltergeist. Those are my all-time. And then you pretty much can pick any Hitchcock film, and I live and die by Hitchcock.
I could see that in your work. Yeah. Okay, favorite flower.
A favorite flower is Datura stramonium, also known as angel's trumpet or Jimson weed.
Tell us why.
So angel's trumpet, the reason it got its name is it is a highly, highly toxic plant, highly potent. One of the key ingredients that's used in the witch's flying ointment, it has a atropine in it that causes delirium, asphyxia, and used in small amounts, it mimics the effect of LSD. And it is absolutely the most beautiful flower. It is the epitome of dangerous beauty because when the flower blooms, it is this large trumpet-shaped flower. It comes in white, cream, purple, and pink, and it exudes a fragrance that is a cross-section of like bergamot, mint, lilac, and freesia.
Okay. And you can extract it, that scent?
No, you cannot. It is completely, you can't extract it at all. The whole plant is highly toxic. And the other part about that I love is that the fragrance becomes, you can only really smell the fragrance at night.
Have you ever tried to make an accord that mimics it?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, we are launching a fragrance that is an homage to it in spring.
Oh,
I just looked it up. It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's
look.
gorgeous. It's a beautiful flower.
Wow.
Okay,
Beautiful
good
flowers.
one.
Trumpet. Okay.
The next question is, what's your favorite snack? we're deep. We contain levels here at Fat Mascara.
Oh my God, I love this. Favorite snack. Let's see. This is tricky for me because snacks are off the table for me at the moment. But
Yeah, I feel like you're really into fitness.
yes.
Like, always, or is this like a new thing?
It's been something that I've dipped and dived
This is the
with.
Fat Mascara 7.
I've kind of gone in and out of my world of fitness, but I think it was about 6 years ago, I made the decision that I wanted to do a bodybuilding competition. And so I've been working towards that goal. And so my whole world has changed. Like I stopped drinking. I really changed my life completely. And I wasn't a heavy drinker, but I was, I really enjoyed drinking, and snacking and like snack foods became completely off the table. So my snacks now are really boring, if I was to be honest with you. But
Do we have a fun beverage at least, like a nice Celsius or something?
I will tell you
fruit.
my favorite, and I can't have fruit either. My favorite, my favorite beverage of all time, and I live and die by it. And I actually interviewed the girl who started it. Was a company called Gia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I love Gia. Love it. Love it. It is like for anyone who's trying to stop drinking. Highly recommend it. Check out Gia.
Okay.
It's such an interesting company, and the product really. It's not like a bullshit non-alcoholic sweet drink. It's just a really interesting, provocative drink.
We're going to let that be your snack then. There you go. Last question. Okay. Oh, this is a new one we added. You have your phone there, I know, because you're doing your backup. Can you open for us the Notes app and tell us, if you don't mind, what the last note you wrote was? If you can.
You guys are assholes. Oh my God. I cannot believe this. I'm so afraid of this right now. I really and truly, I cannot believe.
Let's see what it is before you decide to,
Yeah, we're not like, show us your camera roll.
Yeah, you really don't want that. You really want to know. It's so boring.
That's what's funny. That's what we like.
Oh my God. My last note was, you need to order essential oils. And then it lists out all of my essential oils. And just so you guys can understand the level of like creativity versus business, at the end of the list, it says you also need to do AP.
What's accounts payable?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wait,
That's
can I
funny.
just ask? I'm sorry, this is so on brand for you, the essential oils, but I do have to ask, like, do you actually write the words "you have to"?
Yes.
That's actually interesting to me that you talk to yourself in that way in the Notes app. Like mine would just be the list of oils and I would know what it was, but I like that you gave yourself a command.
No, I have to give myself a command.
You have to.
I like that. There's more accountability.
Exactly.
You have to come back on Fat Mascara. There's so much more we haven't gotten to.
I know we had like 7 more questions, but I just feel like you're a very interesting person.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's
this
sweet
was
of you.
so fun.
You guys are this is a blast. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
it's such a blast. Jessica, I have been a fan of your work, and I really love what you, so this was like such a pleasure, and I think you guys do really, really cool, provocative interviews. So it was really, really an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this has been really fun, and we wanted to have you on for a long time. So this was awesome. Thanks for saying yes.
Oh my gosh, such a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
It's your reviews and feedback that help us make the podcast even better. Head over to iTunes to rate and review us, or email your thoughts to info@fatmascara.com.
We also want to answer your beauty questions and hear what products you love. To share a Razor One product review or to ask a beauty question, email us at info@fatmascara.
If you send it as a voice memo file, we can even share your voice on the podcast. You can also do that by leaving us a voice message. Our phone number in the United States is 646-481-8182.
Thanks so much for listening.